Why toxic relationships are so hard to leave. You know the relationship is hurting you. You have lost sleep over it. You have replayed the arguments. You have promised yourself that the next betrayal, the next insult, or the next night of silence would be the last one. You may have even left before. But then came the apology, the vulnerable conversation, the sudden affection, the version of that person you had been waiting to see again. And somehow, the decision that felt clear yesterday became confusing today. People watching from the outside may ask one painful question: why do you stay? But that question assumes leaving is only a decision. It is not. In a toxic relationship, leaving can feel like tearing yourself away from an entire psychological system built from pain, relief, fear, responsibility, and hope. Welcome to Wonder Jenny and the Robot. This is Case File 09. Today we are examining why toxic relationships are so difficult to leave, and why struggling to walk away does not mean you are weak. It means you need to understand the system. A damaging relationship rarely begins with its worst behavior. It begins with connection, attention, possibility. Someone sees you, wants you, studies you, and makes you feel important. The controlling questions may initially sound protective. The jealousy may resemble passion. The constant contact may feel like devotion. The emotional intensity may feel like proof that the relationship is special. Then something changes. A joke becomes an insult. Concern becomes monitoring. Disappointment becomes punishment. A disagreement becomes a threat to the entire relationship. But the change happens gradually. You do not wake up one morning and consciously choose the final version of the relationship. You adjust to it one small concession at a time. You forgive something you never imagined tolerating. You change your behavior to prevent another argument. You stop mentioning certain subjects. You spend less time with certain people. You begin measuring every word against the reaction it might produce. And because every change seems small by itself, you do not immediately recognize how far the relationship has moved. That is the first mechanism: gradual normalization. What once felt unacceptable eventually begins to feel familiar, not healthy, not peaceful, just familiar. Then comes the cycle. Tension builds. You notice a change in their mood. You become careful. An argument begins. There may be yelling, blame, humiliation, withdrawal, threats, accusations, or days of silence. Eventually, something breaks the tension. They apologize. They cry. They become affectionate. They promise that things will be different. For the first time in days, your body relaxes. That relaxation can feel like love returning. But sometimes, what you are experiencing is not renewed safety. It is relief from distress, and relief can be extremely powerful when you have been emotionally starving for it. The person who created the pain becomes the person who removes it. That makes the relationship feel indispensable. You are not only attached to the good moments, you become attached to the ending of the bad ones. Then the peaceful period begins. They are attentive again. They speak gently. They may resemble the person you met at the beginning. You think, this is the real person. The difficult period is finally over. They understood how much they hurt me. But after enough time passes, the pattern returns. The promises remain emotional, but the behavior remains familiar. This is why apologies can become part of the cycle, rather than evidence that the cycle has ended. An apology creates hope. Hope buys more time, and more time gives the pattern another opportunity to repeat. The next mechanism is the moving target. You are told the relationship would improve if you communicated differently, so you become calmer. Then you are told you are emotionally distant. You become more affectionate. Then you are called needy. You give them space. Then they accuse you of not caring. You ask questions. They call you controlling. You stop asking questions. They accuse you of hiding something. Every solution creates a new problem. You begin believing peace is one personal improvement away. So you keep working on yourself. You read books, you watch videos, you rehearse conversations. You try to become less emotional, more patient, more understanding, more independent, more available, quieter, stronger, easier. But the standard keeps moving because the real goal may not be resolution. The goal may be keeping you occupied with proving that you deserve better treatment. Eventually, you stop asking, "Is this relationship good for me?" You start asking, "How can I become good enough for this relationship?" That question changes everything. Because once you believe the relationship depends on your performance, every conflict feels like evidence that you failed. One person slowly becomes responsible for both people's emotions. You become the peacekeeper, the apologizer, the translator, the person who recognizes when the atmosphere changes, the person who knows which words will trigger another explosion. You learn to prevent conflict before it begins. This creates a false sense of control. You think, if I remain calm, this will not escalate. If I explain it correctly, they will understand. If I meet their needs, they will finally feel secure. But when you become responsible for preventing every crisis, you eventually believe every crisis is your fault. Meanwhile, your independent identity begins shrinking. You stop trusting your first reaction. You need reassurance before making simple decisions. You no longer know whether you are angry, frightened, unreasonable, or merely exhausted. The relationship becomes the center of your emotional world. That makes leaving more difficult because the version of you who could confidently leave has become smaller. Isolation strengthens this system. Sometimes isolation is obvious. A partner may directly criticize your friends, monitor your communication, or demand that you stop seeing certain people. But often, it is quieter. They begin arguments before social events. They create emergencies when you make plans. They tell you that outsiders are jealous. They insist nobody understands the relationship. Eventually, maintaining friendships becomes exhausting. You may stop telling people what happens because you are embarrassed, or because you do not want to hear, "I told you so." Isolation does not only remove support, it removes comparison. Without healthy relationships around you, the relationship's internal rules begin feeling normal. Then there is the investment. You may have given the relationship years. You may share children, housing, finances, routines, friends, memories, or plans. You may have defended the person to everyone who questioned you. Leaving would mean grieving the relationship, but it could also mean grieving the future you believed the relationship would eventually become. People sometimes remain because they cannot bear the possibility that all their sacrifice led nowhere. They think, "I have already invested 8 years. I cannot start over. I stayed through the worst part. Maybe the better part is finally close." But past investment cannot guarantee future change. A clearer question is, if nothing changed, would I willingly choose this exact relationship for another 5 years? That question removes the fantasy and examines the pattern. Leaving may also trigger a kind of emotional withdrawal. The silence can feel unbearable. You may miss the constant messages, the intensity, the arguments followed by reconciliation, and even the responsibility of managing the other person. When your nervous system becomes accustomed to unpredictability, peace may initially feel empty. You may mistake calm for loneliness. You may mistake stability for a lack of chemistry. You may mistake the absence of emotional chaos for the absence of love. People do not always return to what feels good. Sometimes they return to what feels familiar. And missing someone does not prove the relationship was safe. It proves the attachment was real. You are allowed to grieve a person who was not good for you. You are allowed to miss the good moments without erasing the harmful ones. You are allowed to love someone and still recognize that the relationship is damaging you. To see the system clearly, stop examining only the latest argument. Map the entire cycle. Ask yourself, What usually triggers the conflict? How does the situation escalate? What role am I expected to perform? What creates the temporary relief? And what causes the cycle to begin again? For example, you ask about a broken promise. They become defensive and accuse you of being controlling. You apologize for your tone. They become affectionate and promise to change. A week later, another promise is broken. The individual conversations may appear complicated. The cycle is not. Trigger, escalation, your assigned role, relief, return. Once you can map the pattern, you stop mistaking temporary peace for permanent repair. This does not mean every difficult relationship must end. People can learn, couples can change patterns, accountability can become real. But sustainable change requires more than apologies made during a crisis. It requires consistent behavior after the immediate threat of losing the relationship has passed. It requires shared responsibility, respect for boundaries, honesty, and the ability to repair harm without making one person responsible for everything. When threats, stalking, violence, financial control, or severe intimidation are present, confronting the person or announcing plans to leave may not be safe. In those situations, prioritize safety and seek qualified local support, legal guidance, or help developing a personalized safety plan. A damaging relationship does not survive because you are foolish. It survives because pain is followed by relief, confusion is followed by explanation, distance is followed by affection, broken promises are followed by hope. And over time, you stop evaluating the relationship as a whole. You begin surviving it one incident at a time. Naming the cycle does not immediately break it, but it ends the illusion that every repetition is a separate accident. You do not need to prove that someone is completely evil before admitting that the relationship is harming you. The first step out of a destructive system is seeing the system, not merely the latest argument. Write down the 5 stages: trigger, escalation, role, relief, return. Do not explain them to the person. Do not use them to win another argument. Write them down so you can finally see what keeps repeating. Subscribe to Wonder Jenny and the Robot for the next case file, where we examine how to rebuild trust in yourself after someone trained you to doubt your own reality.